This episode is sponsored by the Financial Due Diligence Framework course. If you're doing any type of financial analysis and participate in M&A, strategy, or turnaround projects, you absolutely need to check out this course. By completing this comprehensive video course, you'll be strongly armed to analyze the P&L of any company and to be able to provide actionable, insightful reports. This course teaches you how to properly understand the methodology of how to conduct thorough financial analysis and what is important in financial due diligence. If you're looking for a career in transaction services in one of the big four, in a transaction services boutique, or to be a better private equity professional or M&A associate, you'll get a solid foundation to land your next job. And as a special offer, if you use the code SAASDISTRICT, you'll get $100 off the entire course, made specifically for our listeners. So if you're interested, go check out horizoncapital.com/learn due diligence. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about the top reasons why your SaaS startup needs people analytics today. Today, we have our guest, Ian Cook, joining us. Ian is the VP and Head of Workforce Solutions at Visier, a people analytics and workforce solution that helps businesses with the best practices and enables HR professionals to answer the most relevant questions about your workforce strategy. He's been involved in driving forward the datafication of HR and is a speaker and blogger on the subject. Prior to Visier, Ian built Canada's leading source of HR benchmark data. His knowledge and expertise comes from over 10 years of consulting to global companies. So welcome, Ian. Super excited to have you on the SaaS District show today.
Thanks for having us on, Akil. I'm happy to be here.
So I want to get right into the topic about, people analytics, HR analytics. What exactly is, people analytics and why is it important for maybe, SaaS businesses or just generally, businesses to understand why they should implement that or think about that?
Yeah. So let me answer with the why first, and then I'll get into the what. So, especially in SaaS, which is software based, but increasingly across all businesses, somewhere between 60 and 80 cents of every piece of operating expense is on people. Like if you think about the salary budget for somebody like an Apple or a Google, think about our salary budget, and then even increasingly you get into manufacturing businesses. Their operating expense, not the capital, but the day-to-day money, somewhere between 60 and 80 cents of that is on people.
Right.
And so people analytics is the use of data about people's behavior, about the events that happen to people, and about the effects that those have on the business. Everybody, the simple way to break that down is everybody's focused right now on turnover or resignations, like, keeping enough bodies writing code to build your products. That has a massive effect. If you don't have the bodies, you don't ship code on time. If you don't have the bodies, you don't have experience, you get bugs. If you don't have the bodies, you can't grow your business. And so, people analytics is truly that linkage between what is it about people that has an impact on our business? How do we understand people through the data so that we can maximize our opportunity to make the business successful? Lots of people think of it as like, oh, we're measuring HR practice, and that's not the case. What we're measuring is, how do people behave? How are those behaviors affected, aligned to something the business cares about, be it customer satisfaction, be it, bug rates in code or whatever that might be, and putting those things together so we understand through the people, how to make our business successful.
So just kind of digging in deeper, if I'm trying to set up my analytics and I have, 10 or 100 employees working for me, what are some numbers I know I should be keeping track of? What do you typically like to say that people should pay attention to?
So when you're the 10 employees side of things, you tend to know everything because you're working as a huddle. Like there's not at the size of 10, not much call for analytics. When you get to the size of 100, it would be keeping track of things like really simple things like tenure. At the scale of 100, you're looking to expand. Like when Visier hit our 150 mark, that's when our growth exploded. And so we needed to make sure that we were keeping the people who knew the business really well, because when we went from 150 to 400, like all of that knowledge needed to spread amongst the 300 people who had no idea about our business.
Right.
And so if we weren't keeping that core, we weren't keeping the expertise of that core, the passion, the commitment of that core, then we weren't going to be able to scale our population at the rate that we needed to. So, when we get to that 100 scale, it's like, if sure, I'm 100, but I'm replacing 30 people every year. That's tricky. I'm at 100 and, my tenure is 2 to 3 years. I'm losing 4 or 5 people every year. Okay, we've got this committed body that's looking to really help us grow the business. So, even at that scale, people would go, one person leaves, give or take. Sure, one person leaves. But what tends to happen is, and this is where analytics has really kicked in, is, one person left and then another person left and then another person left. And because they happen as events, you can always kind of find a reason why. It's like, well, it wasn't a good fit. And yeah, their wife moved away or whatever. You can always explain it away. It's not until you actually look at it, in a statistical way that the true is like, oh my God, we lost 20 people because we lost them in dribs and drabs, to use a Scottish phrase. And so that analytics piece just really brings that, okay, maybe we do have a problem. We didn't feel it, but when we see it in the data, we know we have it. Exactly. So it's a core example. Everybody has the headcount. Well, challenge is the wrong thing, but especially when you're building a SaaS product, it's anything like ours, the ramp time for somebody to learn how to put code into your product. It's usually not a couple of days. It's usually a while. And that all has an impact on your productivity.
Makes sense. So what measures get managed, right? So to say. So in this case, people turning around and turnover, all that kind of data is super important to track. There's kind of a big deal talking about predictive analytics as well. What's the analysis insights? So we talk about resignation, turnover, salary estimation, or performance predictions, and how accurate are these predictions and analysis?
Yes. So again, kind of building on the same story, and I'll pivot out to things like performance and salary. One of the key uses of analytics is it's one thing to know that you've got a problem of people leaving. It's a completely different thing to change it. You can't bring those people back once they've gone. Rarely you can, but it's rare. So predictive means actually we need to know what's driving people to leave so we can stop them leaving. Some of our we have studies of really substantial returns to our clients where they've been able to run a program on who's looking to leave and engaging with their leadership to have the right conversations so that person stays. Because often, you don't know why somebody's going to leave, but an algorithm says, hey, this person's in that zone where there's a probability. Then you can actually engage with the person and say, hey, how's it going? What are your aspirations? Do you know what your future looks like here? Is it salary? Is it career? Is it work flexibility? And start to have the conversation that paints a picture of their future in your business. Doesn't keep everybody, but even if you keep, half of the people you talk to, then that's, again, it's a massive return. Especially in something like a coding role, it could be a replacement cost could be around a year's salary on the fully loaded in management time, recruiter time, all of that stuff. So that's a big return. When you're getting into prediction around compensation, a lot of it, and especially again growing SaaS world, the what salary might we need to offer to land a client? A lot of that predictive work would use market data and say, if we offer X, are we going to get the top tier client candidate that we need? Are we not? And how's the market changing? So there's a lot more work being done. Salaries used to be incredibly stable, not so anymore. The market is red hot. So using predictions in that space to say we can get a mid-tier candidate at this price, but we really need a top-tier candidate, so we might actually have to go higher, and actually putting some math behind that as opposed to just saying, hey, so-and-so said they were getting such and such at Amazon. We'd better match that because, otherwise we're going to lose. And again, this is for me a lot about where people analytics really connect with the business. You're kind of running a hockey team. You want the best talent at the lowest cost in the right place. Because if you just chase the market and throw money at the problem, your cost base is going to be too high. It's going to have an impact on your margin. So
it's really just listening in and trying to understand why, right? Is it the salary people are leaving because are we lower than market salaries? Is it because, is it because, same management, it happens to come all from the same manager and maybe there's something there? Is it the technology we're using that no developer wants to work on, right? And they're leaving because of that. So you really pay attention to that and, I guess understanding why that's happening.
Yeah, you make a great point, because often that's like that further exploration. Like we find the problem and then we have to drill and dig and understand. And when you get that, you get to start to manage your business with precision, which is kind of in the competitive environments we live in, that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, and how accurate would you say, things are like, exit interviews are? Do they really share the full story, or do you think, employees are typically, not telling the truth at that point?
Yeah, I think exit interviews are an average source of insight. We do the prediction off the event set, so we use what's called a random forest. It's a piece of machine learning. It learns based on prior habit, what people have done in the past. So it tends not to rely on exit surveys. It actually tends to rely on like what we know about the people. And we validate it to make sure it's working. We don't practice black box. We're fully transparent in how that works. And we found it to be extremely accurate. The challenge with exit surveys, when you're small, paying a third party to do it is hard. Third parties, you're only going to get a portion of the people who are prepared to talk to you. I think I've seen some stats somewhere. I would struggle to go and reference them, but the frequency with which the top reason in the pick box was checked as to the reason of exit was like 80%, because people are just, oh yeah, I'll fill in this survey, but they just click the first thing whether it's true or not, just to get it done. So there's a lot of reasons why exit survey data, whilst it's often relied on, it can actually be extremely misleading. So we advocate far more for the from the data as opposed to tracking people's opinion. There's lots of reasons why you would not give the truth in an exit survey.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you mentioned one tool. Is there any other, recommended tools or applications for maybe some SaaS founders listening in? They want to access this data and start leveraging it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of ways to get started, and lots of people they literally start off in Excel. Other common tools that people are using, especially if they have a kind of an orientation towards tech, is things like R and Python to build the analysis. Visier has built an application where we do a lot of because there's mainly 3 stages to getting good people insight, and the technology tools kind of do pieces of it, but they don't do it all end to end, whereas we're more end to end. So you need to get the data from your source systems in and prepared. And so there's a whole ETL data management piece. There's then this notion of a domain model. And this is again where you need the expertise. Like, what's the right way to calculate promotions? What's the right way to calculate turnover? How do you manage pay, what you actually pay, against the budgeted pay that you've got? And that's a domain model. Like, that is the analytic knowledge. And so, we have that layer. And then there's the whole distribution and secure distribution, which is important, because it's when you use the data that actually makes sense. So, you can stitch those together yourselves with a bunch of expertise. And when you're small, lots of people get started with Excel fairly quickly. And we find when organizations hit that 500 to 1,000 person size, it makes sense to engage with a specialist vendor. It takes a lot of the work out of your IT group. We have lots of people who they're technology firms, but they've chosen not to build it themselves because they don't see the point in spending their development resources. They should go into their product. They shouldn't go into this kind of thing. So, that's
so
tends to be
you have the option. Yes, you have the option of building yourself using something like Python or R, and build up your own analysis internally, and then maybe there's the option of hiring business consultant, data analyst, or analytics companies that maybe will source and maybe provide and manage that market data against yours. Do you see any much difference in terms of the overall quality and how that's managed?
I do. I mean, I definitely advocate that you should own this capability yourself. Because what we've seen quite often, especially in the build it yourself group, is that there's a particularly brilliant data scientist or particularly smart individual comes in and they make something.
Yeah.
And then after they've made it, they're kind of bored of it, so they don't want to maintain it, and so they move on. But they're the only person who knows the quirk in the code that goes from the source data to the answer. And so if the source data changes and the thing breaks, there's no way to reverse engineer it and fix it.
Right.
So you then get into a rebuild. So if you go down the route of, and the same thing's true for consultants, like, if you're paying a consultant to make it for you, then you're reliant on that consultant's knowledge to maintain it. And that's what people often forget. It's like, oh, well, we'll get this answer. It's great. Yes. But you should only build answers that you want again and again and again. It's not a one and done project type thing. It is it's an operational insight. So it needs to maintain. So your choice is to make sure that what you have access to can be continued, looking to automate a lot of that. Those are really important steps. So own it yourselves. And again, there's vendors like Visier and our competitors who can deliver as a service. It's literally, we're a SaaS provider. So subscribe to us.
Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see kind of the difference there in terms of, how people are being managed and seeing it internally, right? And you have to update that database, that library frequently. Otherwise, the data becomes irrelevant after some point, right? So that's another part.
I mean, that's a great point, Akil. One of the huge things that we saw through the last phase that we've worked through is the whole, move to hybrid models, work from home, different management practice. Mm-hmm. And so for a large portion of our clients, they've shifted from, it was the HR team and the people analysts who were doing the work to distributing it out so that anybody who has people to manage is actually able to access information about those people and access information about their team. So, it's an evolving practice that is increasingly becoming embedded in the way people manage. And managers were hungry. It was, we better be careful in the data we give them. And then all of a sudden, like, usage just off the scale and real high demand for, like, help me understand this better. Can you tell me more? Like, what else could I understand? So, managers are kind of hungry to understand their people, not from the, what do I think, but how is this actually working?
I'd imagine, like, with, a lot more, especially SaaS organizations and all kind of companies moving more remotely, there's been more of a demand for this, especially when, you're working from home, that you probably, as an HR person, you feel more blind. So having these access and tools, you feel a little bit more in control of what's going on and understanding your business organization or your department a bit better, right? Any other differences or things you've seen that became apparent as people shifted to be remote?
Yeah, a lot more use of data around kind of employee perception and not just the classic engagement survey, but a lot more like micro pulsing. So pulsing on a weekly or monthly cadence around, is your homework set up good? Are you getting the support you need from your manager? Do you understand our mission and direction? How do you feel about the innovation that's going on? So we're seeing this an expansion of the data that's being fed in. So it's the employee profile, like, who am I? Who do I work for? And, how do I feel about that work? And how do I feel about the business? And how do I feel about these things? So those two things put together, as well as this extension out to the manager, and even things like categorizing who is working from home, who's not, who's in a hybrid, so that difference can be dealt with. Like it used to be that kind of HR had a policy that applied to everybody. One of the accelerations that's absolutely was underway already, but has really taken off, is this segmentation of the workforce. So who needs what, depending on where they are. Early career professionals have different needs to mid-career professionals with family, who are different to more mature professionals who are looking to leave legacy, even in a very simple basis. So understanding that this one size fits all policy has to allow that freedom for people to make their experience of work for them, means that you can't do it without data.
Right.
Intuition doesn't work because it's too complicated.
It's biased as well, right?
Exactly. Good point.
So you mentioned, typically when you're getting, 500 plus employees, this becomes obviously a lot more important. And then you mentioned this, you can't have an all-in-one kind of solution that applies to the entire department. if I'm a SaaS founder, I have all these employees and I have different, skill level, different, teams and departments. How do I go about choosing the right system or solution for HR analytics and, for a SaaS company specifically?
Yeah. And I'll pull on stories from our customers. What they've, it's actually a common problem across analytics everywhere. What you need is a common, centralized, standardized repository of data that you can use to analyze, and common, measures, metrics, ways of building calculations, again, that is standardized. And then you need that in a technology that allows for locally built execution. So it goes back to this. It's not one size fits all. So you need to make an assessment of what tool can I have that sits at the hub. So data management, data prep, the way in which turnover is calculated, the way in which promotions are calculated, the way in which pay change is calculated is all standardized, but exactly what Group A use is completely different to what Group B uses. And we've got the security model that allows that. So, looking at it as a centralized infrastructure, but with localized, decentralized use, so that, whoever's running customer success doesn't have to consume the same content whoever's running finance, because clearly their business needs are different.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, looking at the way to build it out, it's like, okay, is that a person in each of those groups that's responsible for it? Or is it there some core central infrastructure we can use where experts in each area using the same content can then serve their lines of business? The second one is the one that scales with the business.
Yeah, exactly. Which is super important with SaaS. Yeah. And kind of coming back to the kind of remote teams, moving to that direction, and change in resignations, and especially we've seen that a lot among mid-career professionals. I think a lot, especially maybe the yeah, I can imagine. Can you share maybe some other trends you've seen with in terms of HR analytics, and what are some terms of behaviors you're seeing in 2021 as the dynamics have changed with teams all over the world?
Yeah, so don't even know where to start. There's so much change. So we have benchmark data. So we take all our whole data set and we process it to understand what's going on. So we spotted the Great Resignation back in February and started to share that with our clients. We knew it was coming. We could see the patterns already. One of the big thing that's driving that is different, which again, where data is really key, is a lot of people are reassessing their way they work. So it's not necessarily that I just don't like this employer. It's actually, I kind of want a different work experience. I don't want to code anymore. I want to go into marketing, like huge disruption. That's one piece. The other trend we're seeing, which I think is super interesting, is more of a move to a product mindset within the people analytics group. It used to be, it was projects.
Yeah.
Everything was like, oh, let's find out about this. We built the spreadsheet. We calculated the answer. We told the business it died. Whereas our more sophisticated groups are saying, actually, we're going to build a product for customer success. We're going to build a product for sales team. And they go through a product development cycle of what's the business requirements? How does the data get used? They prototype, a data story. Like, here's how we're telling you the answer to your questions. Like, does this work? Does this not? They change, and then they publish and maintain. And so we've seen a huge trend in people analytics away from that fixed dashboard. Very few of our customers have one dashboard that serves the whole business. They may, but it would be very constrained piece. Far more to precise insights for pieces of business that are then built as a product, not as a sort of one-off cycle. So, and I think that's a fascinating trend, because it really puts that people data the same footing as finance data, where there's a cadence. It's clear. We're using it alongside the decisions that the business is making. So it builds it into the fabric of day-to-day decisions. And then the other trends are just the massive expansion of the data that's being used. So, the kind of assumption of some folks is that I have an HRIS. That's the system that captures the employee record and kind of says who you are, who you work for. Like, right. I just need to analyze that. And that's no longer true. Survey data, payroll data, talent acquisition data. There's a whole host of new information around wellness that people are using. There's a whole drive around OKRs and that area. So the other major trend is this understanding that analytics is across an ecosystem of other transactional tools. So you have your system for tracking your OKRs, which is, that manages that. But it only gives you answers about OKRs. It doesn't give you answers about sentiment. And so bringing that together, like this one place to see everything, and being able to bring all that data together is people are seeing the importance of it, the value of it, how it's necessary in actually driving strategy. And so again, just the range of different systems that are being fed into us has accelerated a lot.
And if somebody's, a SaaS entrepreneur listening in today, and maybe they want to leverage some of these insights and analysis to, they have some of these HR challenges you mentioned internally. Where do you suggest them to start to even look?
Great place to start is on Visier's blog. It's called Clarity, and what we feature there is kind of combination of papers around how to think about it strategically for your business, and then case studies from organizations that are doing it. So you can see both technically, how should I think about this? And then actually, what is the return to my business? And so you can start to educate. There's another group called Insight 222 who again publish a lot of information around the practice of people analytics. And then the couple of great conferences, People Analytics World and BFAO, they're great groups to follow in terms of, where's the current state of practice, what are practitioners thinking about, what's the state of the art, what's the best thing people are doing, as well as what's the common way in which to build out a function. Because one of the other trends I think that we're definitely seeing is we've been dealing with a lot of early adopters. We're now firmly in that mass adoption phase where the organizations are working out how to go about adding this practice to their business. So following those who've beaten the path, following those who kind of know how to do it is a key way to get it done fast.
Awesome. Well, we'll add those links in our show notes. If people are interested to learn more, you guys can check them out and learn, how to apply it yourself with your business. So switching gears, Ian, more kind of on the personal level and understanding your background and kind of how you got to where you are today. Would love to hear, a bit of your background. And I think you joined the Visier team as the VP of People Analytics. And if you can just share, where you guys are in terms of size today, if you guys know how much, if you guys have raised, or you guys, publicly traded, or you bootstrapped completely. Yeah.
No, so we're 11 years old from the founding of the company. I've been with the business about 10 years. We recently announced a Series E of 125 million, which was fronted by Goldman, and that took us into being unicorn status. So we are the market leader in people analytics globally, and we're pretty proud of what we've achieved in terms of the growth and scale of this area. We started with a notion that people analytics could be done differently, where you start with a business question and you build an application from there. That was kind of vision 10 years ago. This last round of funding, the sort of achievement of that valuation has been, for many of us who've been pounding it out for 10 years, it's kind of validation that we weren't wrong all those years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats on that. That's a huge achievement.
Yeah. And my role with Visier through that was predominantly on the product side, building out, what's in the product, why it's in the product, communicating the value of that, and setting product strategy. And then what brought me to People Analytics was the experience of consulting, as you mentioned in the introduction. I kept running into what I describe as the CFO challenge, where you want to spend money on people, you've got a strategy that will work, you have seen it work elsewhere, but you cannot prove that the money will be returned. The data, the understanding, the quantifiable approach to people just wasn't there. And so 20 years ago, I went back to school and started to dig into this people analytics thing and built out my capabilities. And Visier is my second people analytics business that I've built or been part of building, to be really clear. And I'm super excited by where we are, because it's now becoming just a given practice across the whole HR space, and really key around people.
Ian, if just a kind of hypothetical question, if you were to start a new platform or software in this space today, and I'm saying this because maybe there's somebody listening in from our audience who's looking to start something in the HR space, and maybe there's a clear problem you're seeing from the trends. Anything you would tackle and focus on today?
There's an emerging challenge around how to understand the productivity of an individual.
That's a good one.
And it's not a one size fits all. It's not about hours. It's really complex, thorny, and multifaceted. And yet, as we go hybrids, one of the biggest fears that every employee has around hybrid is like, well, they're not going to see my work. They're not going to see my contribution. Am I going to be judged fairly? And it's a problem that data can solve for us. It's a problem that a really well thought through approach can solve for us. The data exhaust is there. The technology could be built. But it's a thorny nut to crack. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
but if you crack
so many factors,
if you crack it, there is gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people try with time management and seeing kind of how people spend their time. But I mean, that's probably a good start. But I think there's a lot more.
There's a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, OKRs is an attempt, but OKRs is still it's really heavyweight in terms of it takes managers to ask you to put them in. It takes an employee to be good at articulating it. It takes both of them to change it if the direction changes.
Exactly.
I think the modern solutions will, pull from Jira, pull from Asana, pull from ServiceNow, and link that back to something else around the employee, some kind of assessment of their capabilities, their energies, and build that performance profile.
Yeah.
And it will be, who knows exactly how, but it's certainly not one size fits all. So, yes.
I love it. That's a great one. Nice. So Ian, I want to switch gear a little bit more rapid fire questions, also about yourself. So you're part of the management team. You serve as the VP. It's a quite demanding role, and kind of, we spoke about this, right? Just in this last answer being, success or what kind of you bring to the table. How do you measure your own, say leadership success and within your own team?
Yeah, that's a really tough question and a really good question. So I say it two ways. I see my role as a leader is to set direction and to sort of look around the corner to position us to win in the future. I don't see my job as I'm on the strategy side of product, so I have to work out where is the money coming from next. So that's kind of part A, and then part B is it's about the people and. Are they enabled? Again, as a leader, I don't see my job to control folks. I think that's impossible. My job is to enable folks. So do they understand? Are they aligned to their skills? Are they able to give of their best? Do they, invest their energy towards the goal, with as much energy as possible? And so I kind of measure it those two ways. How right? You never get it dead right in terms of where you're going to go. Like it's crystal ball gazing, but how right are we? Were we in the ballpark? Did we miss? I love making those bets. Even when they're wrong, it's still a fun process. But
exactly.
When they're right, it's really, really fun.
Yeah.
And then measure on people's willingness to give commitment, to give energy, to give the best of their capacity. We're very, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of individual effort that goes in, and we're the collection of all of that individual effort. So if you're able to unleash that through how you lead people, then I think you've got two of the foundations in place. So those are my two personal measures, and they're the precursors to the revenue, of course. So that's how I think about it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, how do you get the most out of the people? I guess that's the fundamental of any management of a team, right?
It is, but I position it slightly differently, Akil. Is how do you help people give their best? And it's a slightly different phrasing, and I think it's an important change.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, if you were, going back to your 25-year-old self, you can tell, give yourself one piece of advice. What's something you wish you had known and you would tell yourself at that point?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I wish I would have known about product management at that point. I went into consulting because I liked solving problems and I was interested in solving the problems. About 20 years ago, I morphed into product because I realized in consulting, you solve the problem once and then solve it again and again and again and again. And that's kind of boring. So I think if I'd known about product management as a 25-year-old, I don't even know if it was around as a 25-year-old, probably in its nascent state. If I'd known about product management, my career would have been slightly different. No regrets about where I went, but I would have told myself to look a little more at what is around what the world of work looks like and what's possible. Because at that point, coming into work, it was access to that information was very hard to find. So I wish I'd told myself to spend more time digging into what I'm truly passionate about in work.
Ian, who or what are some of the best 3 resources? It can be books, it can be people, mentors, or just people you follow in the space who you'd say have been the most instrumental to your success over these last few years.
It's inspiration-wise, and he's long retired. There's a guy called Jack Fitzenz who kind of did a lot of the foundational work around using people data, wrote some of the early books and kind of established this piece. I've met him, talked to him. He was a huge inspiration to kind of say, yeah, there's a different way to do this people thing. And then on the people to read side, there's a couple of folks, Richard Rosnow, who's a practitioner, really deep thinker about how the function should work, how you build out the function. Another guy, RJ Milner, as well. They're both friends and quite often go to tap into like how are you thinking about things. Trying to think of the other, and then inspiration wise, again, there's a couple of guys, Dan and Patrick Riley, who are building out a group around people centric business, and it's really starting to rethink business. In the traditional business in the prior to the 20th century was built around the money. And how do you actually build a business around the people so that it makes money? And I find that really inspiring. And there's a bunch of folk in that group who are really pursuing that question and talking, blogging, engaging in what does that actually mean to build a people-centric business. I get a lot of energy and inspiration from them.
Love it. Any books you'd recommend? Any 1 or 2 favorites?
Most of my favorite books are kind of old.
That's okay.
But, actually, there's a recent book put out by David Green and Co., which is around people analytics, and it's a really solid practitioner book. Some of the interesting books for me are a book called The Fifth Discipline by a guy called Peter Senge, who it looks at how does an organization perform and how does an organization behave. And there's some really good fundamental truths that hold true. He was one of the first people to look at an organization as a system, as opposed to a machine. Lots of people think about organizations as a machine, as opposed to an ecosystem. The machine metaphor is fine if you're making cars like Henry Ford. It's really bad if you're making software like us. So I still find myself pulling pieces from that. I still find myself referencing that to some of the folks I mentor. So that would be an inspiration from the past.
Good to know. We'll add that book to our show notes if you guys want to check that out. Sounds like it's a good read to check out. Ian, what does success mean to you today? Whether that's personally, business, financially, life. I guess there's no right answer, but
success to me today it's I'm at the point where making sure that Visier's mission, the purpose we've built into the business, continues to grow and endure. Like we've done the phase of establishing that the approach we went down, the need for what we're doing, the value of what we're doing is there. Like that's a given, kind of. But for me, that's the start point. So success for me is continuing to grow the impact of our work on the lives of people who work. We have countless stories of decisions that were different because analytics was used, and they've been better outcomes for people. It's like a lot of our clients have used our data to look at the diversity inside their organizations. Many of them put in programs that enable economic mobility for their employees. They noticed they were very diverse in their entry-level roles. They weren't very diverse in their management roles. They've committed to change. They've put in the money. They put in programs. They're building pathways for people to excel. That's what excites me. That's kind of why I'm in the space. That's what drives me every day. And so success for me is just how many more of those stories can I build, basically. And Visier is a catalyst for that. And it's not just me, it's the team at Visier that's driving that forward. So
that's cool. Seems like you found your dream place to be, where every day you can be successful in your impact of what you're doing.
When you're, as everybody does, when you face those tough days, it's a nice touchstones to kind of bring the energy back.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. This has been great. I really enjoyed this podcast. Really nice chatting with you. For people listening in, founders, HR managers or marketers who want to maybe get in touch with you, learn more about you and Visier, where's the best place to reach out?
Yeah, best place to get me is LinkedIn. I'm active there. I host a Thursday debate where we debate topics about people analytics. Usually pretty fun. I got a bunch of very insightful, educated friends and colleagues that will engage in the debate. It's very civil and usually really educational. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me. And then Visier.com is our website. Recommend Clarity as our blog, as a place to get access to great information, to get educated. And then, look for me in various speaking engagements. I speak at Gartner. I speak for a bunch of different places. So you'll be able to keep in touch with me through that. But I'm very open and active, checking in with folks on LinkedIn. And I love to share what I believe and what I know and how that helps. So,
awesome.
Welcome the contact.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian. I appreciate you jumping on the SaaSDistrict show today. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Akil. Good to chat.
You as well. Thank you all for listening in to this episode and joining SaaSDistrict today. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at horizoncapital.com. And myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please DM us on Instagram or LinkedIn at Horizon Capital and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again and hope to see you on the next one.